Well, welcome back to another edition of Buildcast. With me, as always, is my co-host, Natalie Roberts. And we have a special guest today, Melissa Nicewarner Daly. And as always, we have our video producer, Raul Espinosa. Werewolves of Thunder.
Lightning and thunder.
So Natalie literally just learned today that song, it's Werewolves of London, not Werewolves of Thunder. So we've been giving her a little bit
singing Werewolf of Thunder. I prefer the mashup.
There you go.
Wait,
a little
brought the thunder
from the Imagine Dragons song. Yes. So now that we got the important stuff out of the way, so Natalie, I know you and Melissa have known each other for several years. So why don't you talk about I'll let you do the superlatives and make the introduction.
I am happy to. I think our guest list continues to get just exceed itself. And Melissa and I met about 3 years ago. Melissa is the head of HomeAid Austin. And she brings a wealth of knowledge, not only through assisting our less fortunate in the community, but also within the home building industry in Austin.
Yep. So let's just dig right in and let's talk about HomeAid and you know how it got started and really why it's your passion.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. We are one of 19 chapters nationwide. So HomeAid America started 32 years ago in Orange County, and it was the Home Builders Association there was looking to help a local nonprofit that was serving the homeless community with a construction project. And so the HBA went around asking the different trade partners for monetary donations to the project. They didn't see that they were getting very far. And so when they changed the conversation then to ask for donations of labor and materials, all of a sudden they were getting a better response. And so that's very similar to how we function in each of our markets. And so we launched HomeAid Austin here in June of 2018. The board was already assembled when I came to the scene. And so they had brought in, top level executives from the home building industry. We've got some people from title and mortgage, some people from the financial institutions who really wanted to be a part of building new lives for Austin's homeless. And so how we do that is to partner with what we call homeless care providers. So that's any nonprofit who is serving those either at risk of or currently experiencing homelessness. And we assist them with their renovations and ground up construction projects. And we do so by leveraging the incredible talent and resources inside the home building industry. We are the charity partner of the HBA of Greater Austin. Most of our chapters are partnered up with their local builders association, and that's just an invaluable partnership to us because it gives us access to people who can, build our projects, who can contribute through all kinds of talent, time, and treasures. And then once we play matchmaker between the organization we're partnering with and the home builder we call the builder captain, then that's the person who's essentially going to GC the project. So, and our mission used to really be about putting heads in beds, and now we can do anything from food pantries to emergency drop-in centers to transitional long-term supportive housing, because it is a continuum of care that's necessary in order to help our neighbors stabilize and hopefully ultimately move their lives forward. And so once we play matchmaker, we can do anything from land acquisition to, pairing an architect with a builder. We help build the budget, help with the scheduling. And that is, again, because of these incredible partnerships we have with the home building community and who have been so generous and really looking for a way to give back. But I think, both housing and homelessness are very complex issues. But HomeAid,
especially here in Austin, obviously it's a bit, and certainly, in other major cities as well, but it's something that we've been tackling here for quite a while. And it's a very polarizing topic as well. So.
I think with the decriminalization of homelessness, we've seen people literally come out of the woods and There's a rumor that people are coming from all over the place because Austin is such a great place to live. Well, Austin is a great place to live, but our homeless community is, through Echo's point in time count, we're seeing that most of the people who are living on the streets are here. They haven't transplanted from other places. But it says to the home building community, look, like these are really complex issues, but we are asking you to help solve for these complex issues by doing what you do best, and that is building housing. Yep. So we don't try to tell the partner organization how to run their business. I mean, just like any construction project, once it's finished, we hand the keys over and then we move on to the next project and we continue doing good work throughout the community.
So I have to ask, I mean, obviously I'm assuming this is definitely a passion project of yours. How did you get into specific, or what was your previous life, so to speak, and how did you get to HomeAid?
Most of my career has been in the nonprofit sector, and I've also launched a couple of things. So my first opportunity launching something was when I worked for Community Impact newspaper. And I moved to San Marcos with my husband he enrolled in Texas State for the PhD program, and I launched the Hays County edition of Community Impact newspaper. So to me, that was so exciting. I felt like that role was very similar to my involvement in the nonprofit sector. It's very community focused. I loved getting to know the local business owners. To me, I feel like they're the rock stars of the community. They give it the flavor. And just really hearing their struggles, in Hays County especially, they're really doing everything they can to keep the lights on. I mean, this year, set aside this year, right? But so I really, really love that job, but I wanted to return to nonprofit. I had heard about a position through a colleague of mine at the paper that there was an opening at Back on My Feet. It was a nonprofit, it's another national nonprofit that works with folks who are living in addiction recovery centers and also homeless shelters. And running, we talked about running earlier, is at the center of the mission. So we use running as a tool to help motivate, goal set. And the end game was full-time employment and permanent housing. And so all along the way, every month we'd run races. I mean, our members would do anything from Vern's No Frill 5K in Georgetown to we had one of our members run 100-mile trail race.
Well, Raul and I are doing the Murph on December 12th.
All right.
Oh, we are? Oh, okay.
They paused in breath when you said Raul and you.
Yeah, he doesn't know it yet, but we're going to convince him.
So
this is the best kind of races when it's a surprise when you show up.
Yeah, right.
But not me, we're good.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be 100 pull-ups, and I think I can do one.
Oh, yeah.
I was a college athlete, so I went to school at Southwestern in Georgetown. I swam, and I remember seeing the job posting, thinking I'm not really a runner, but I've never done anything with the homeless community. I was so uncomfortable. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about homelessness. And I showed up for my first run. We ran 3 mornings a week at 5 a.m. That's a lot to expect of anyone, but especially someone living in a shelter, right? Yeah. And I showed up and I looked at the program director, who's a very good friend of mine now. And I said, I can't tell who the members and who the volunteers are. And he's like, that's the point. Because
that's awesome.
They would give everyone new running gear. It puts everyone on a level playing field. And the idea was that through the program, through showing up at 5 a.m. with a positive attitude and supporting your teammates and setting goals and achieving them, that whether you'd ever held a job in your life, that you would have these transferable skills that any employer would find desirable. Whoa. And so we mostly focused on workforce development because that's what we were good at. We did housing, but gosh, it was hard. And so when I heard about HomeAid launching through a friend of mine who had been selected to serve on the board, I thought, oh my God, I just have to meet whoever's launching this. I got to get an interview, or if I'm not the one for the job, I need to be involved in this in some way, shape, or form. So
you pretty much muscled your way.
I did. I actually went on we did a site visit. So we visited a potential HomeAid project before I had the interview, before we launched the chapter. And it was an organization in San Marcos that I knew the executive director. So we all learned about HomeAid together. I left with a job description and the rest is history.
Wow.
Right?
Well, good for you.
And the chapter began.
So
what I think we're hearing and what I know about you personally to be true is it's been a calling that started with one nonprofit organization, and then by default, through your passion and dedication, has led into HomeAid. I think the curiosity in that, and the question I have right off the bat that we've never discussed, is from where you started with HomeAid and your understanding to where you are now, what's been the biggest significant perspective change in the organization and what you've experienced, not only with your board, but with the people that you interact with every day with the homelessness and homeless?
Well, I don't have as much contact with our neighbors experiencing homelessness as I once did. I was more in direct services with my last role. This one is more, we're working directly with the organization serving. So there's a bit of a layer between, which I do miss. But, you know, I just have to make opportunities for myself now to make that happen. But I think, you know, what's been eye-opening for me is just, I always wanted in my nonprofit career to partner with other nonprofits, and you always talk about it, and then you see it happen every once in a while, but it typically falls short of who's going to write the grant, who's responsible for this, who's going to get the money for this. And because we're all businesses at the end of the day too, and we're trying to meet our numbers and in program and fundraising. And so at the heart of HomeAid is all we do is serve other nonprofits. We are a nonprofit whose sole purpose is to lift up other nonprofits. And by doing so, we are able to create that level playing field as much as we possibly can for people who are in such a vulnerable place in their lives. And, you know, we help a myriad of missions. So we serve missions that work with victims of abuse, people struggling with addiction. We can serve veterans, the chronically homeless, you name it. So to me, I think whether or not and very few people, thankfully, can directly relate to homelessness, but we can all relate to the causes, which are things like trauma, abuse, addiction, loss of family. Like I
love that collaboration though between different. I was part of Austin Involved for years, and I love the fact that it was, you know, big on reaching out to a different charity every month. And the cool thing about it is, you know, you keep going to the events until you find that one that you're really passionate, and then you kind of detach a little bit. But just that collaboration, I think, is
community.
Community is what will solve all of these major societal problems. It's, you know, we talked earlier about, you know, if you're only associating with people who are like-minded, and that isn't community. That's not, that feels good and it feels easy.
But it's stale. It stagnates, and it's not bringing in new ideas. Yeah,
and it doesn't fix the problem. And there's so many. It's a tangled web of problems. I mean, there's systemic racism is a contributing factor of homelessness. There's, you know, again, addiction, all the different things. And so it's being able to bring together all kinds of different skill sets, values, beliefs, and give everyone a chance to be involved in it. And that's what I think is so beautiful about HomeAid.
How many projects do you do a year?
It just depends. So this year we have been out at Community First Village, and we have 7 home builders who have dedicated to constructing 8 tiny homes with our group project. So that means 8 individuals who will have a loving, supportive place to go home, who've previously been on the streets for 10 or more years. And all the safety, security, and confidence that comes along with that.
Yes. So let's walk us through, if you wouldn't mind, a project, a residence. How do you get started? How do you decide who gets to move into the residence? How does it work? So once we've, identified the project, they apply through a process, present to the board votes on it ultimately, and we have the builder captain identified. We are looking for projects that are going to, again, either stabilize or help move people forward. So the project we're working on right now is considered long-term supportive housing. So the people who are living at Community First Village, this isn't a stepping stone for them. This is an aging population that has lived on the streets for 10 or more years. And you think about how that ages a person, just even being on the street. So, it depends on the nature of the mission as to like what the end result is going to be, I think, for the client. So, but this is a place for them to spend hopefully the rest of their days. And
every project, again, has wraparound services connected them. So we know that housing alone won't solve the problem. So you've got to have case management. You've got to have an opportunity to make a dignified living, financial literacy training, whatever it takes. And so that's the project we focus on this year. We've got 8 projects in our pipeline right now, which is great. I mean, it's awesome that organizations are beginning to think about HomeAid when they think about, potential projects. So we've got, there's so many cool ones out there. Project Transitions. We've got Helping Hands in Georgetown is on our list. Texas Baptist Children's Home. And again, they serve so many different groups. And so we have a project selection committee whose role is to, we've got a site visit coming up with Peace Lutheran Church, is to go out there, meet with the leaders, learn about the mission. Does this mission align with ours? Do we have someone in our pipeline who could potentially take on this project and gather their trade partners? And, our goal with every project is to save our partner organization anywhere from 30 to 60% off the total cost. And then obviously it's that peace of mind knowing your project is in industry professional hands. So that's what sets us apart from organizations like Habitat, which are fantastic and employ the help of volunteers in the community. We work with Lennar, Taylor Morrison.
And not everybody's cut out to be a carpenter. Just saying. Right.
I always joke, I always say, you're never going to see me swinging a hammer unless it's for a photo op. There you go. I like it.
Hey, Brian, who are you talking about, Brian?
But it's great. No, and it works. There are a lot of organizations that employ the help of volunteers and they do a phenomenal job. That's just what sets us apart. It makes us different. So,
it's more scalable, I would imagine as well. And you can take on a larger amount of projects and
well, and you're working with, quite often I know you work with Charlie and Lennar, and in that you have a well-oiled machine that comes in. They know they've got their purchasing department, they've got, their construction, and they come in and they're able, to your point, to deliver that stability and then that trust and timeline that you can get the projects done on time and on budget. Under budget, from what you just said.
And predictable craftsmanship too. You know what you're going to get when you partner with these bigger operations, and their buying power is
the whole supply chain economic part is so much more efficient. And I would imagine these partners are going to be, more aggressive in participating in stuff like this because you have this process set. Because look, they're now more than ever, they're incredibly busy, and building a one-off house here or there, that's a chore. So having a process that they can literally just step into and get going, get it done, has to be a strong factor for their support, I would imagine.
I think so. I think we do a good job of, helping shepherd it through and making it. And we also do a good job of giving recognition to the home building community, because I think it's
important.
It is important. And it's important to show that the home builders and developers are a part of the solution. And that, if we make it so hard for developers and home builders to create affordable housing, whether it's just through, restrictions or permitting or whatever it is, and that's an unnecessary burden that is placed on the nonprofit community to solve for that problem. And so again, it's through these partnerships and collaboration that we are able to more eloquently solve for the issue and do it in a very meaningful way that I think that's, been so eye-opening for me too, is just to see the impact it's had on the people's lives who have touched the projects, and whether they're, the electrician or they're the actual builder captain, whatever, everyone has a role. And, it's just been extraordinary.
Well, and with that too, it's interesting when you said that, I thought back as you mentioned the natural partnership between home building and homelessness. And there is, I have goosebumps as I'm saying it. When I began my career in home building and in new home construction, I've always had a very soft spot for homelessness. It amplified. There is a beat in the heart with home builders for homelessness. And that began when I got into home building and met Alan Graham and worked with Community First. Back in the day, it was just Mobile Loaves and Fishes and Strike Against Hunger bowling tournament. But that you've been able to tap into something that is so close to their hearts and that they feel a need to contribute back to the community, I think is the essence of who HomeAid is. My curiosity lies, is that every market, is there that same sense of community and ownership and giving back with builders nationally? Because I only know locally.
Absolutely. And we see a lot of our local builders are involved on a national level. And so, you know, it is incredible. We all have different relationships with our local builders association, but ours is fantastic. That really is a determining factor for how successful we are, because they gain us access to this incredible Rolodex.
And some HBAs are just flat out stronger than others. I mean, there's, you know, and how active the participants are.
Great point.
You know, associate members, actual members, builders, that sort of thing. So
we found out like how much the relationship hinges on the leader of that organization. And if they don't have the buy-in, if that's not a cause, but we hit a home run with our CEO over there, and she's fantastic. Taylor has been a really great partner for us, and just whatever she can do to facilitate warm introductions. And because, you know, there's only 2 of us on staff. And so and with COVID, you can only be in front of people so often. And so, and it's good. I mean, you were asking back a little bit what my eyes have been open to working for HomeAid. I don't come from the home building industry. I know it's a different world. I have learned, like, I I don't know if we can cuss.
You
on
can
here.
cuss on here. That's as long as we don't say anything too bad.
Every time I go to a site visit or any kind of construction meeting, I am constantly writing things down and looking them up when I go home. I didn't know that you don't spell lean like leaning on a table. Yes. I am humbled every day in this job.
We're always learning.
But I feel like that's part of being here on earth. Is if you got to love as hard as you can, learn as much as you can, leave this place better than you found it. So.
Well, we talked about that earlier as well, you know, in the home building industry. And in our very first show together, Brian and I discussed why choose home building? What is it about home building? And it was an immediate acknowledgement of it is an emotion-based industry that is ever evolving.
Perhaps one of the most. I mean, of course, you have childbirth and you have marriage and maybe divorce.
I'm trying to rank these as you're saying.
But I think that it's interesting because the home, I mean, that is that can be the foundation, and without that, I mean, I couldn't even imagine.
It becomes a part of your DNA.
It does.
You know, I was lucky to give birth to one of my children in our house, and you know, if we're lucky, we'll die in the house. You know, the home is somewhere where it's not just a place you park your car and you eat your meals. It is where you make memories, and we want to be able to create that opportunity. We believe strongly that everyone deserves access to safe and dignified housing. So not giving second-rate craftsmanship or, you know, hand-me-down clothes or whatever is attached to the project, making sure everything is top of the line, because it needs to be a place that you could see yourself living.
Exactly.
And that kind of interaction with a person or a community creates hope. It restores someone's hope. It changes the way they see themselves. If they're wearing new clothing or they're sleeping in a new construction home.
Skyrockets.
Absolutely. And that's everything.
That is. And it goes to your earlier point as well, where in talking about community first, and we think about Alan and Alan's journey and Alan's book, it's a talking point for me, and it applies to HomeAid, but the number one reason for homelessness is a catastrophic loss of family. And in that, with what HomeAid is doing and with what Community First is doing, you're providing a sense of community. Where I'm taking this, because I know you're questioning it, is the level that you're finishing it out. So what I saw from HomeAid on social media, I'd like you to talk about the finish outs and the design that went in and how those groups fold into what the end result is when those keys are handed over.
It's a good question because I kind of have in my mind what I think it is, and
it blew my mind. I was absolutely impressed, but it gave me hope in the human race.
Well, first of all, Alan is definitely a hero, and I think he's a revolutionary. You know, I mean, he is. I think revolution can be such a negative term sometimes, but he is true. It truly is a revolution what they've created out there, and he didn't wait for permission. You know, he went ahead and they did things their way. They knew they were going to have to go outside the city to make it happen, and guess what they have. And so
just before, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just so we were talking about, you know, let people know that may not be aware of the project, you know, what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So our 2020 project, we decided, wouldn't it be great if we had 8 or 10 builders? Typically we would just have one builder build, you know, construction project or renovate. What if we had 8 of them and they each had their own tiny home? And so we gathered the, you know, various home builders last year in September, and both organizations presented to them. We coordinated on this builder captain recruitment event. We both presented on our missions. We talked about the value of being a HomeAid builder. I mean, because they could go out there and just build it for Mobile Loaves and Fishes, but the value of being a part of this group project is that they'd be a part of a team. You know, we felt it would get done more efficiently because there's just something about being in, you know, right, like 10 feet from your competition, but working toward a common goal. Oh my God, it's a competitive industry. And we use that to our advantage.
Amen.
So, and it's, you know, and there's very few, you know, moments where they can be right next to each other working on a common goal. Usually they're, you know, head to head, and it's such a competitive industry. And so we had 8 sign on. We had William Lyon Homes was then acquired by Taylor Morrison. April stepped up like a champion, and she absorbed that William Lyon Homes. Can we just mention
that might be Brian's next door neighbor?
Yeah, not direct next door neighbor, but yeah, they are neighbors. Yeah,
howdy neighbor.
The Whitakers are phenomenal.
Right,
phenomenal. Oh, yeah, so she stepped up and said, "We got this." So they did too, and so they, you know, working with Mobile Loaves and Fishes is a dream, especially in a year where like everything is inside out and upside down, and they're developers. So it's different from working with a typical nonprofit. That's not what they do for their day job. So they make everything so easy. And they have the floor plans. They got to pick their floor plans, and we.
So the ones the new homeowners get to. So it's some of
the neighbors, they got to pick and help design, but no, the builder got to pick the floor plan. And so we had them in a cluster. They built kind of in clusters. So all of our homes were right next to each other, which was cool.
One street, right?
And
or 2 streets.
It's kind of a conglomeration.
There you go.
Yeah, they're not like in lines so much because for the most part, the porches all front face each other to create that sense of a community. Almost like a campfire feeling, which I love.
Awesome.
And I mean, they went above and beyond. I mean, Mobile Loaves and Fishes is not going to have to pay anything for these homes. We've saved them over $200,000, but we just asked them to build the home. So they, you know, they are in charge of takeoffs, and they know, I mean, there's very specific, like what goes in the home. And then they came to us and said, well, can we furnish them? And we said, I mean, I don't see why not.
Sure.
So, I know. So all 8 of the homes will be fully furnished.
Amazing.
I know. And then, it's just, it is incredible. So we are in the process of our dedication event. So we'll do ribbon cuttings. We've already had, I think, 3. We've got 1 tomorrow for Scott Felder Homes. And then Friday we have Trendmaker. And we've got a couple more in November finishing up. And then, we found out we got a grant through David Weekley Homes Foundation. And so we kept thinking, like, what should we do with this? It should be something meaningful. Let's not make it just like baskets of like, you know, like household items. And so they have these hydration stations throughout phase 2, where it's a place where neighbors can fill up, you know, water buckets. They can water their plants. They can water their animals, you name it. And so we have a board member who is launching a new construction company with her husband, and they had already been building a home with the company's CCG that they're working with. And so we were like, this is perfect. It's a smaller project. It'll give them like their first community type project as a new company. So it's been really cool. And just the neat people you meet. I mean, the trade partners are incredible. They are the heartbeat to me of these projects. And, we try to give them as much exposure as possible. I mean, I think representation is hugely important, and that's a way for us to, to represent. And so, it's been an incredible project. So that's been our project for this year. So those 8 homes, and once they're complete, I don't know if anyone's moved in yet, but I imagine by the end of the year.
That will be great. They, to give a little background for our listeners too on Community First that may not be from the Austin area. Community First is and Melissa, please jump in as well, is a community that assists in lifting the homeless population off the streets. And in that, it's unique. I know I've been involved in and out over the course of a decade with Donna when she was still there, Emory. I think she's since retired. But what they do is there also is an interview process from folks that are wishing to come in. And the dignified living comes in that there is a certain monthly rent that they have to pay. And in this, so what the organization has done is built a village down to Alamo Draft House, donating the outdoor movie screen. Wow. You've got the Toffer family with the commissary, and you've had HEB come in. And then as they've evolved and expanded, and I'm sure there is much I'm not doing justice to, but as they've evolved and expanded, they have an oil change shop where the residents, once they've moved in, now can earn a living. Yeah. So not only they're lifting off the street, they're holding a sense of accountability and responsibility by being committed to paying a monthly rent. They're being provided an opportunity to either take the bus route into a job or work
being given
on
chances
site
that they probably wouldn't have otherwise gotten.
And then, one of my favorite parts was back in the day, Carter and I would go out and we would help in the gardens before it was where it was now. And so to that point, every thought of what it takes to build an individual up, build a community up, is provided in Community First, in my mind.
Which I think is really important, because if you just provide housing or you just provide, one of those things, it's just like the legs on a tripod. It's going to fall over if you don't have that foundation there. So that complete solution.
And you just did a podcast with Alan Graham.
I did.
That's
my first.
Yeah.
This is my second. Yes.
Yeah.
An old pro.
You are. You're well on your way now. And I think the partnership with HomeAid and Community First is a good segue too to talk about solving affordability.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
and that seems to be an overall, resounding theme. And how does that apply?
We've been talking a lot about that. I mean, obviously, we're in the building industry and we have businesses to run and all that. But, as Raul's done a great job of getting us to talk about more than just, mortgages and rates and just the regular day to day. We're not allowed to. Yeah, Raul, he doesn't allow me to talk about rates and stuff like that, because mortgages can, they're not sexy, but integral and critical. But but we want to talk about the interesting things having to do with the home building industry, and affordability is absolutely a critical path. And it'll be really interesting to see where it goes over the next 3 to 4 years.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think that hopefully what y'all are doing prompts more discussion and maybe some inquisitive eyes and saying, hey, let's see what they're doing. Maybe we can do that on a larger scale, because how many, and you may not know, and I'm kind of put you on the spot, how many requests do you get that you have to go through to fill the vacancies in these houses? For
Mobile Loaves and Fishes, I'm not sure as far as the application process, I've had some, through back on my feed, we've had people apply, but they're trying to build as quickly as they can make it available for as many of people who need it as possible. But I mean, the need is great. And, it's twofold, right? There's there's inventory, and then there's, opportunity. And I think jobs are tied to that too. Like it's the whole dignified living, right? Like people's salaries are being outpaced by the price of homes. You can't afford to get into housing. And God, if you get into housing, it's really tough to afford to stay in housing. Sure. And so I worked on a workforce housing task force recently, and just, setting goals for, getting people into whether it's multifamily or single family housing, but then how do we keep them there? Sure. Like, how do we help them maintain their homes? Because it's like we get them in their homes, and the second they start falling apart, all we do is blame them for all of society's problems. But
they haven't owned a home and maybe ever,
right?
Or a decade,
or they don't have the support,
they don't
or the
have
knowledge,
the resources or funds to fix it. And so I think it's, and then it's also looking at what I was saying earlier about the relationship between, city leadership and the home building community. We can't make it this badge of courage that, like, not here, not now, not ever, or developers are bad. And we just we can't get past that because we've been so burned in the past. And, maybe you have, that's true. I've seen that happen in the community I live in. But it's a disservice to everyone if we don't work together. It's like, let's work with the developers and builders, because they look at us like, oh, you're doing such great things. It's like, yes, but we are working with for-profit builders and developers. But it's a great
not place. Everybody has to be involved out of pure altruism. I mean, obviously that's great,
but you have to incentivize them.
You have to incentivize them.
There's no incentive for building affordable housing.
Correct. Unfortunately not.
Other than doing the right thing for the community.
Which I think a lot of the home builders, and I'm sure that are involved, that's why they're doing it. But you also have,
it's a for-profit industry.
Right.
It is. Exactly. It is. Yeah. And it's good publicity. And, I don't care. I mean, as long as the good gets done, what does it matter?
Well, and I can definitely, it's almost a defense mode, but it's not. No, I can speak from the heart of the inside of a home builder, right? And when we were starting Milestone, continually, it was new. It was issues, right? You're learning, you're growing, you're building. Every home has 1 million parts in it, and so no home is perfect, and it's never going.
No matter how many times you build the same house, it's always going to have issues,
right? And there's this generalization that the home building industry has to overcome, that we're the big bad builder or we're the big bad developer. And when it comes,
that was banks and mortgage companies.
We're right there. Hey, we can go to that conversation too. I know, right? You say that until you're on the PR side of a home building company. So what I hear you both saying is, we had to literally talk to people and say, I live here. My family lives here. Mm-hmm. I have to go to work every day like you, and I have to earn a living. Now, when it comes to HomeAid and Community First and the outreach, and yes, we can't. We can't do everything for free. In the heart of every home builder, we do that because we love doing that. We do that because we believe in it, and we do it because we are building communities. Whatever way you cut it, whether it's a stick and brick house going up, without partners like you and the community, we can't move forward. So I think, to the point where, yes, we're for profit, and yes, it's charity. It's more than that in the home building industry. And there's a genuine concern and love of lifting others.
There's a desire to help your neighbors. And I think, one of the things on our task force we looked at is, like, what if we waived impact fees? Yeah. What if we waived permitting fees? What if you assigned a person from the planning department to help usher your project? Sure. If you came to the city and said, this project is affordable housing, what if we made it easy for you rather than, making it difficult?
It's really difficult. And that was actually going to be one of my questions is what are your thoughts? Are you starting to see more support from the city? Because especially as we're looking into have partnerships in the manufactured side, we're starting to see, city of Dallas and several cities across the country saying, hey, we have a major affordability and homeless issue. How do we fix this? But the bureaucracy and the time it takes is just, it's
well, it's our point earlier, right? We were talking about we can sit around and talk about this stuff till we're blue in the face.
Get it done.
I'm a get shit done kind of guy.
I love it.
I want to get out there.
I love you.
And that's why I love nonprofit is because we don't have to jump through those hoops. I mean, of course, we still have conversations and we still put a lot of thought into our work too. But you don't have to go through the rigmarole as much. I mean, we still have to get permits and we still have to do those things, but there is a sense of urgency. I do think our city leaders, our community leaders, I mean, we cover 6 counties. So
are you getting support? Are you getting a lot of support?
I mean, sure. I've had council members reach out to us and basically say, like, we've got projects. If you, like, we have this shelter that needs major renovations. We've got this hotel we've required. I mean, our thing is we are still growing. I mean, we can, like, if we were to help with a huge project, we could do the finish out. But other than that, I mean, we don't have the capacity to take on, like multi-million-dollar project right now.
Being too busy is better than being not busy.
Yeah. And I think, we've been looking at, over the last years, like where can we see some big wins with the size of projects we take on? Like the size isn't always determining the impact. For instance, we did our very first project. We did Taylor Morrison was the builder captain. They renovated a 1920s pier and beam home. It had not been super loved for a while. And so we took it from,
Raul, are you in?
We took it from grab to fab. And so prior to us renovating this home, SAFE had been partnering with LifeWorks and I think they'd been serving clients 17 hours a week. And so these are victims of sex trafficking and exploitation. So with this home, they were able to, we created a beautiful space for an emergency drop-in center. And so it was very conveniently located right next to a bus line. They used it as an entry point to their organization so women could learn about all the various resources available to them through SAFE. They could get a shower. They could grab a snack. They could get some counseling. They could meet other women going through similar situations. And we took them from serving 17 to 50 hours a week. And so that's a tremendous jump in, broadening the scope of their mission. And that's what we're looking to do. Like, we want to broaden the scope of these missions. Like, we vet the organizations, just like we vet the builders. They're doing great work. They've got, they've been in operation for 5 years. They have an amazing track record of success. Their financials are sound. All the boxes are checked. And because we want to make sure the project is around for years to come, because with home building, that it's not just the family or the individual that purchases or occupies the home. Like, initially, it's the many families after them because it is quality craftsmanship and it's going to be around for your hope is for generations. And
because if it's not, then you're not going to see this replicated, because I think there's a huge need for this, and we know that. But there's not enough of it, and there's so much more demand than there is supply, just like in the for-profit side. But I think you have a lot of eyes on you, and when you have a good, and we talk about this all the time in our endeavors, but, you create this proof of concept that works generationally, then you're going to have a lot of other municipalities that say, hey, you know what, I want to support this because it wasn't just something that was, one and done or, looked awful in within 5 years and it turned out to be nothing more than a glorified homeless camp or something like that. So, and I love that you have a complete solution. Because look, we all have opinions on how the homeless issue should be solved. It is incredibly polarizing, and whether you believe or not, that what happened here in Austin was the right thing or not, I don't think you can deny that what you're doing solves or checks off, from what I can tell, most of the boxes. I mean, again, you're providing that house, but you're also providing services well beyond that. Everything from jobs to check-ins and all that kind of stuff and wellness and all that. So I think that's incredibly important, because the last thing you want to do is see people revert back to
well, that's a holistic approach that you have to take.
You're bringing in by default, well, not by default, with intention. You're bringing in the community, and so where you might have, once polarized perspective of homelessness, I think you start to chip away at that by doing this.
100%.
I think there's this common misconception that why can't you just pull yourself up by the bootstraps? Like I did it. I had hard times. But the concept of bootstraps just doesn't exist. And I've helped somebody, we were talking about licenses earlier. I've helped somebody acquire a license and it took like months. I mean, it's something as simple as getting an ID, which you can't get housing or a job without some sort of identification, tracking down someone's birth certificate when they were adopted from the Philippines and they don't know their birth. I mean,
things that nobody thinks about. They take for granted.
It's a messy problem. And
having an address.
I mean, and I think there's organizations that have their own very specific approach to it, which makes them successful. I think HomeAid has a pretty singular mission, which is I was such a fan of because it enables you to specialize. And that's Community First Village and Mobile Loaves and Fishes. They serve an aging population that is chronically homeless. That is a very specific niche of the population. And that is why they are so successful.
Agreed.
Among other reasons, right? And like all the work they've done over the past, couple of decades, it took a long, of course it takes a long time to get there, but I think, we want a silver bullet. We want a knight in shining armor. And I do too. I want someone just to come in and save the day and just make all go away.
I think that's the next best thing because, most people see, or at least that I see on social media, is complaining about, how bad the homeless problem is here and the needles and trash and fecal matter, whatever the case is, they complain about. But this is actually taking people off the streets, putting them in a home. And I think, you kind of mentioned it earlier, we take for granted how important it is to have a home address, and a place to secure your things and
to get a job, to get a license.
Well, and I need to refocus the blame too, not on the person, but on the issues, right? On the problems. Like we get so angry, like we have, I think, a certain threshold of discomfort, right? Like what we can handle,
just understandable.
Yeah. I mean, no one was intended to live under a bridge. That's not agreed. No one should, but how'd they get there? Right. And that does take time and patience and professionals. And so, it is, it's engaging all the right people. And it is such a community effort.
The growls jumping.
Sorry, Raul.
I know.
Oh, no, you're good.
He did come alive.
There he is.
I was just going to say, we did a video about a year ago at a place called Austin Street Center. And it's actually in Dallas. So it's really weird. Yeah. But one of the things that when we interviewed the director, one of the things that really stood out to me was he told me like the main difference between you and any one of these homeless people here is that you have a network of people and a community. And that really stood out to me because it's like, these people, if I, lose my job, I have a lot of family that I can go crash at their place. They're going to help me out with food. They're going to, there's so many, or even like a driver's license, like someone can take me to go get my driver's license and I can do the rest of myself. But
your family,
these people have no support.
Right. It's whether it's the family you were born into or it's one you created along the way through friendships.
Exactly.
If you're right. If you lose that support system, then, it's easy just to end up, and then I think there's this, I'm a big fan of the 4 agreements. I don't know. Yeah. That book. And I think you eventually make an agreement with yourself where, there's also the common misconception that people choose homelessness.
Sure.
They want to be homeless.
Probably the most prevalent.
Right. And I think when you're so down and out and it is so hard to dig out and these systems are designed to fail us. Like it's hard to get it. Like it shouldn't be hard to get, Social Security or benefits or your license, but it just is. And you need help. But I think when you get to a certain point, you make this agreement with yourself. It's like, okay, this is what it's going to be.
Right, and you've accepted your reality.
Yeah. Even Alan Graham, he said to me the other day, if you had to choose between living with your family or your support system in the woods in a tent or under a highway in a tent or living in a shelter by yourself, you're going to choose your family or the woods or the tent every time all day long. And so
you would accept that reality and you would make that reality work to function.
And I think we forget that. Yeah. So
great point.
It takes a lot of grace and pause but also, it's just leaning in and digging. And that's what we really try to focus on is like, yes, this is, it is messy, it's complicated, but
don't let that be the barrier of entry. Just go roll up your sleeves.
We know what we can do.
Go do it.
Yeah, we know what needs to be done, and we know what we've got the skills to do. And this is such a resource-rich industry, and it is doing incredibly well right now. It's so
financially rich right now too.
Yeah,
so.
It is. It's a balance like everything else, though, right? Like, I mean, with the home builders, you want them to have the time to work on projects,
which is really tough right
now. We've kind of hit that tipping point where they're just inundated with a good problem, right? But with tons of opportunity, but then also have the, financial well-being to be able to support us monetarily so we can continue growing our operations.
And I think you have a lot of builders that are feeling very blessed right now in the middle of the pandemic. So in a way, that provides a little extra motivation on, how can we give back? I know that we as an organization, have been the same. So, okay. Speaking of driver's licenses, Natalie has to go to the doctor so that she can.
I love that I no longer, I thought I had no boundaries. I really don't have boundaries right now.
We do need to wrap it up. But so Melissa, how can people find out more? How can we all find out more? How can we help?
Well, you can visit homeaidaustin.org to find out more about our mission and ways to get involved. We would love for people to help us with anything from construction projects to HomeAid Essentials is our outreach arm of our mission, where you can get involved through hosting a drive. We also play matchmaker and identify a partner organization, ask them what their needs are, collect items, anything from diapers to to self-care items, anything, kids art supplies. So there's lots of ways to dig in and be a part of lifting up our neighbors.
Especially right now with the weather swing too. I think, great point on that is thinking of the families that blankets, coats, socks, shoes, all that jazz, and knowing that you all provide that and you can take that in is huge. I think a lot of times people put this on a high level, but that's a great point.
Yeah. And if, I think, again, we scratch our heads, and if you don't know what to do and you don't know what to say when you see someone on the corner, just say hi. Just ask somebody how they're doing, because everyone needs human connection. And I think the world would be a much better place.
More than ever. And that's one of the things that we really espouse in our work with veterans is, there's of course the 22 plus veterans that die daily of suicide, and you have to get the word out. Just take 5 minutes to call somebody, and it takes minutes that may have a massive impact. You just don't know. It doesn't have to be anything special. Just call, be ready to listen. That's it. And we need to do that. I think we all do. So, and especially now when it can feel a little less physically connected than we normally are.
I have to add to both of your points, that was a game changer for not only myself as a human being, but also as a mother. And 14 years ago is that question: what is your name? That's an amazing question to ask someone that's homeless. And then what happens from there is it is this beautiful story that unfolds.
You build the identity.
That you look at that person and they look at you, and you begin to learn their life and you begin to learn their story. And then by default,
they're not just a homeless person.
No, you're so right. And that has been the biggest really learning curve, is that holy moly, to your point, Melissa, take the time. Hi, how are you? But what is your name?
Yeah. And these are people experiencing homelessness. Yeah. We try not to define them by their homelessness, not say they are homeless. That's a great point. This is just this is hopefully just a season in your life. Our goal is to help people move through that and past that. So, words matter, and how we interact with people matters. Seeing each other as people, I think, just getting to know each other, just seeing the commonalities. Gosh, everything is so polarizing right now. We talked about that.
If you just see that in every aspect, whether it's homeless or racial divides or whatever, just start seeing people as people.
Yes.
Okay, so homeaid.org.
Or social media.
I was
silly.
We kind of have it. Yeah.
I was going there because, and I think it sounds like a lot more of your projects and stuff like that are out there.
We feature a lot of our projects on social media. I think we do a top-notch job.
You are fun to follow on social media. We all, you can get the relevant, the content, but you get the human, beautiful side.
We have a good time. There is, of course, a lot of sadness, at the heart of what we're doing, but there's so much, there's way more joy. So that's our goal, is to bring as much joy to our work as possible, to show people that there's a way out and there's a way up out of all this, and we can do it together. So yeah, we're on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
So reach out to Melissa and get connected, and obviously see how we can help. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This was so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you. And look forward to hearing how you guys do over the next several years.
Thanth you.
And you'll be singing Werewolves of Thunder the rest of the day.
Werewolves of
Thunder.
Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see everybody next week.